Welcome, critters! I'm Claire Jones, your devoted host of the Sacred Reading CR podcast, where we discuss and examine Critical Role episodes, plot lines, characters, and players through the lens of sacred reading practices. And today is a Halloween episode! Yay! We're having Halloween in March, and so we decided to do a little bit of Halloween ourselves. So this particular episode is about Campaign 1, Episode 30, Part 1. And joining me today is Petall and Atlas. We're doing a trifecta. So let's go around and talk about our costumes real fast. Petall, you're at the top of my screen, so I'm going to call on you first.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm dressed up as the character of Shanks from the anime One Piece.
Tell us a little bit about Shanks.
Well, Shanks is a very important character to the main character of One Piece. He's the one who gives the main character Luffy his straw hat and inspires him to set out on his journey of trying to become king of the pirates. So I am Shanks, still with the straw hat to make myself more recognizable, and also because I still have two arms, and Shanks loses his arm right before giving his hat to Luffy, so it works.
So we've got early canon Shanks joining us today.
Exactly.
All right. And Atlas.
I am a Triceratops because the onesie was cute, and I like dinosaurs.
Yeah, we tried to be thematic a little bit with what we're doing today, and we're kind of there. I'm a cave woman, so I've got my little animal pelt going on and stuff like that. This costume was made for Florida though, so I am freezing. I've got a blanket in my lap because this costume was not made for March in Washington State. But yeah, so that's it. Please join us as we embark on this exciting adventure in story analysis and self-reflection in order to deepen our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. As always, we love hearing your own insights and stories as well, so please comment, like, subscribe below. And ready? All right, let's dive in. So, as they open their very first Halloween episode, Marisha and Laura are dressed as Violet and Hannah, the rat queens from the comic book series. Travis is Helga, the angry tavern wench whose only love is Scanlan's short halt. Sam is Burt Reynolds with a stuffed monkey as Smokey and the Bandit. Taliesin is Quentin Quire Kid Omega of the X-Men comics. I have no idea who that is, but I believe him. Liam is the Dread Pirate Roberts, and Matt is Geralt of Rivia from The Butcher. So, in-game, the party has recently arrived in Whitestone to confront Lord and Lady Briarwood, the two people responsible for the death of Percy's entire family, and are currently in the process of, one, killing all the nobles that were placed into positions of powers in the town by the Briarwoods, and two, starting a grassroots rebellion movement among the townspeople. So far, they have killed Sir Carrion and have spoken briefly with Keeper Yennon, but are still trying to keep things under wraps. As the sun begins to set, Vox Machina have returned to the tavern that they previously stayed in. They head down into the cellar, and Keyleth uses hallucinatory terrain to hide the entrance to the tunnel that they had done previously. The party questions Percy about the names that are on the barrel of his gun and the smoke that emanated from his body in the previous battle, as well as the strange cough that he's developed since entering Whitestone. They also ask about him pulling down his mask, which he usually doesn't do during battle. Percy says that he hoped that it would help Sir Carrion recognize him, that it would make Percy feel better about the whole thing. He explains the dream he had about a year after the Briarwoods took the castle, where an entity asked him if he wanted revenge and the means to achieve it. In return, he would have to offer up the souls of those he killed. He says he woke up the next morning with an idea, which he then built, creating his first gun. Percy defends himself, saying that it was just a dream and that it wasn't real. Keyleth asks him how long it had been after the Briarwoods coup that he had this dream, and Percy says about a year. Baxalan points out that it was definitely just not a dream, since they all saw the smoke. He asks if Percy has any theories, and the gunslinger says he doesn't know. He's never thought about it because it doesn't matter. Vexalia asks who the last bullet is for. When Percy doesn't answer for a moment, Vex says that they don't want to lose him. Percy says that he showed the captain of one of the ships he spent some time on after leaving Whitestone what he was building and what he was intended to do with it. The captain said if revenge was what he was after, there would be no stopping it and there would be casualties along the way. He said Percy would have to give up things and to hurt people, and that was the price of revenge. Percy says that the last barrel is because there are not just 5 names. He is going to have to keep hurting people because it never ends. He has killed a lot of people on his journey with Vox Machina, more than 5. And the last barrel is to remind him that this is the path that he has chosen. Vax argues that they had a reason for killing those people. Percy counters that the names on the list, also have reasons they should be killed. Vax agrees that the Briarwoods and their circle need to die, but the level of violence displayed in the previous battle went beyond that. He asks, what are we to look forward to? Where are we going? Percy says that he was hoping to serve repentance after he was done serving revenge. And Keyleth says that he's speaking of these as if they are metaphysical beings, as if revenge were a literal thing. He says that he no longer feels in control and does not trust himself anymore. He doesn't expect anyone else to trust him either. However, he does trust Vox Machina. Scanlan rolls a quick insight check to see if Percy is being honest, and he picks up that Percy is not trying to conceal anything. Grog asks if Percy is afraid that he is going to hurt them. No, he immediately answers, I'm afraid I'm going to disappoint you. He trusts that Vox Machina has come to Whitestone out of justice and maybe friendship, but he himself has not. Percy is here for revenge. He wants to hurt his enemies and he wants them to know it is him. He says that he thinks he needs people who are here not for revenge, and he doesn't know how to stop this. Keyleth tells him that just because he started this path with revenge doesn't mean he can't pick up other motivations along the way. She asks if he believes that he's doing this for his friends, or is it 100% revenge? He says he could justify it, but he would be lying. He wants them to hurt, wants them to pay, wants them to suffer forever and beyond. Grog says he thinks that is fair. And Percy says that he is grateful that there is justice to be found by doing this, but even if there wasn't, he would still be here. Vax says that he wants to talk about a plan because they're with him up until a certain point. Once they have gotten rid of the Briarwoods and their allies, what then? Percy says he's never had to think of what happens after the last of his targets are killed, but he thinks Vox Machina will either have to save him or finish him. Vex says they won't do that and curses that Pike is not with them because she would know more about this. Percy says that he does want to save Whitestone, and Vex does a religion check to see if she knows anything about this kind of entity that would be influencing him, but can't narrow it down. Grog says that it will help Percy on his quest, so they'll finish it, and then if he gets out of control, they'll just bop him on the head and take him to a temple. Vex says that's actually a pretty good plan, and the two of them agree that Percy looked pretty awesome, wreathed in smoke, although Vex is quick to point out that she doesn't like how dark the situation became. Grog gives Percy a thumbs up from behind her. Vax says that the chances of Percy succeeding on his own are pretty fucking slim, so if he wants the rest of the party to work with him, he can't go door to door bringing wrath and ruin the way he just did. Scanlan says he doesn't understand why everyone is so upset about what happened. The whole point of their mission was to assassinate Sir Carrion. Vex says that ripping Vok's tongue out went a bit too far. Vax says they need to dial it a bit back, and Scanlan disagrees, saying they need to make a strong appearance. They're not going to win over people with an election. Vex says that people will want to see those that oppress them hurt, but Keyleth says that they've also seen a lot of mind control happening with the Briarwoods. Percy agrees that it got out of hand. He says he hopes Vox Machina will restrain him if he starts acting like that again. And the moment he threatens any of the party is the moment he is no longer in control. Percy says that he doesn't know the name on the barrel, didn't know that the name on the barrel was going to disappear on its own, and he thought he could maybe get it to stop if he carved it off himself. Keyleth asks if he realizes that they tried to talk to him about this after the fight, but he was more or less unreachable. So they probably won't be able to get to him next time it happens. Vex says that's not going to happen. They're going to have to knock him the fuck out. She says, don't worry, Percy, we've got you. Grog says he'll knock him out. Percy begs them to do what is necessary. Vex walks up to Percy and kisses him on the cheek, repeating again that they've got him. Grog asks if they should rest and go find another noble to murder, so the group begins discussing plans for their rebellion. Scanlan suggests waiting to see the citizens' reactions to their first strike against Sir Carrion because they need help to go against the big players. They decide to rest for the night and plan to visit a magic shop known as the Alcove in the morning, as Percy is familiar with the owner. Vex senses an undead presence within the town and feels that there are more around than there were before. They seem more active after Sir Carrion's house was set ablaze. They settle down to rest. Percy and Scanlan take first watch, Grog and Vax take second, and as the night goes on, the temperature steadily drops. A low mist begins to form within the tunnel. Vax wakes up his sister, but Grog is convinced the fog is just normal fog and steps closer to prove it. As he leans in, the fog begins to form into a humanoid shape and reach for him. Vex, Grog, and Vax all roll for initiative as three pale humanoids with fangs emerge from the mist. The one in front of Grog quickly moves to his side and attempts to bite him, but it deflects off the chainmail around his neck, courtesy of Scanlan. The second vampire also grapples Grog, moving the chainmail out of the way and successfully bites into his neck. The third heads for Vax, swiping both of its clawed hands at him. The first hits, but he manages to dodge the second. Vex shouts, wake the fuck up, and Scanlan, Keyleth, Percy, and Trinket all jolt awake. Vex casts Hunter's Mark on the vampire attacking Vax. Using her blazing bowstring, she shoots an arrow at it, rolling a natural 20. The second arrow misses. Vax ignores the vampire in front of him, clicks his boots of haste and daggers one of the vampires around Grog. Grog goes into a rage and slams his firebrand warhammer into the creature's chest. For his second swing, he rolls a natural 1, and the vampire ducks out of the way with the warhammer wedging itself into the wall of dirt. Grog begins struggling to pull it free. One of the vampire grapples and bites Percy, who is still waking up and is prone on the ground. Another attempts to grapple Grog again, but he just slaps it away as he continues to dislodge his warhammer. The vampire then strikes with its claws, but Grog easily dodges and laughs in its face. Another vampire grabs Vax and tries to bite him, but he shoves it off. Vex shoots an arrow at the vampire looming over Percy, but can't get a clear shot and misses. Percy breaks free from the grapple and stabs the vampire with his new rapier in a blind panic. The first stab hits, but the second misses. Vex shoots another arrow at the vampire successfully. Scanlan finally gets up, turns to face the wall, and begins urinating. As he does so, he pulls out his wand of magic missiles and fires missiles at all three vampires. They all turn toward him and give a strange look as they see what he's doing. Scanlan then inspires Grog, who finally pulls the warhammer out of the dirt wall, slightly embarrassed that it took so long. The vampire in front of him laughs, so he recklessly attacks it successfully. He pulls back and does it again. The vampire, now scared, claws at Grog in fear. Vax daggers the vampire in front of him, grinning in its face. He says, "Vampires ain't shit." But they notice that the wounds on the vampires are slowly sealing themselves, and the one that had its face smashed in by Grog moves over to join the one that's attacking Percy. He does dodge out of the way, but is grabbed by the second as it leans in for a bite. Percy, however, manages to jam his pepper box into its mouth, forcing it to pull back. Keyleth finally gets to her feet as the rest of the party assure her that it's not a dream. They are fighting real vampires. She positions herself in order to line up with the two attacking Percy, shouts to the party, "Shield your eyes," and casts Sunbeam at the vampires, immediately turning them to ash. Turning to the final vampire, Keyleth wraps a grasping vine around it and yanks it away from Vax, slamming it into the opposite wall. Vex pulls out a wooden stake and jams it into the vampire's chest. The creature yells in pain, but manages to pull the stake out from its chest and angrily hisses in Vex's face. Percy stabs the vampire 3 times and backs away as it swipes at him but misses. Vex wonders if they should try asking it questions, but Percy says that they should just kill it. Scanlan turns, still urinating, and casts vicious mockery, taunting the vampire with, "What's up? What's up, Toothy? Hey, bite me." The urine streaks across the vampire, and Grog helps it by smashing it to the ground with his hammer. Scanlan is pretty sure that his running water is what killed it. Grog says that the fog is bad and they should probably find a new hideout. The twins agree with him. Percy tries to persuade the party to get a full night's rest first, though. but Scanlan suspects that the vampires might be spawning from the Sun Tree. Vax settles the discussion with a coin flip, determining that they will search for another place. But Vax and Percy ask Keyleth to tunnel them under the city, but she doesn't have the spell slots to cast it. And Grog and Vex point out that they don't want to be traveling out in the open at night when the town is full of vampires. So the party decides to stay in the tavern, moving into the cellar as Keyleth blocks up the tunnel with a wall of stone. They open up one of the bottles of expensive ass wine to share. Vax and Keyleth take the first watch. Vex also stays awake because she doesn't want the two of them to be alone. The other half of the party goes back to sleep, and the night passes without incident. As they wake up the next morning, Percy feels more corrupted than before. He's having difficulty controlling his sadistic, I don't know why I want to say statistic sadistic tendencies, and he now aims to torture his enemies before their deaths. Grog asks if they're going to find another house to kill, aka thoroughly investigate, and Scanlan once again uses seeming to disguise Vox Machina as a bunch of peasants. Percy is wearing his hat of disguise as extra precaution. The party decides to split up. Vax and Scanlan going to talk to the townsfolk while the rest search for a new hideout. They decide to check in with each other over the message earrings every 30 minutes and use the code word Dorito if anything goes wrong, and then head out into town. And that's where they break for the episode. So, what do we think of this first half?
I mean the conversation with Percy at the beginning is probably my favorite part of it. I love characters that kind of like dance around morality. Best way I can think of to put it. And so like seeing Percy's journey with all of this is really cool, in the conversations and the way that the party members react, and Percy like being honest and being like, I don't know if I can control this, like, and I don't know if I want to control this, and just all of that is just fascinating to me, and I love it.
And he contradicts himself a few times too, right? Like he's obviously still trying to figure out how he feels about this, because at times he says he feels out of control, and then he warns the party that he does get out of control to do something with it. So is he currently out of control?
Yeah, this is one of the conversations that makes me realize how young Percy is and how much he's learning about how the world works. You know, the whole idea that revenge will feel good and that he can control it, and that's all falling apart in front of him, because this is kind of the first time he's actually had to deal with any of it. And he's so good at sounding adult, and then stuff like this hits and it's very obvious he's more of a child than he'd like to be.
And I think the party's reacting to that, you know, like they definitely do expect him to be the adult of the group here. And they're like, wait, you don't know what's going on? You don't know? Like you were the adultier adult here.
Yeah, even like I think if we look at the canon ages, he's on the younger end.
Is he?
Yeah, he's 23 or something like that at this point. And it's kind of the middle of the pack, but it is on the younger end for a lot of them. And he definitely has some limited life experience coming from a sheltered upbringing. You know, so he's kind of new to this whole world of adventuring. So he's young in age, he's young in his adventuring career. He's learning the hard way some of these things. He's just very good at putting on a facade. And it's kind of cracking right now, which makes it for some very interesting conversations.
Yeah, I wonder if the party's feeling betrayed by it a little bit.
Yeah, I think they just like don't know what to do with it, and they're just seeing, because Percy before was always so like put together, but I think they're seeing like how deep the hurt and the trauma runs within him. Like in this case, he doesn't have it all together. In this case, he's like too hurt by everything that he had like that has happened to him and his family, and being here again is not bringing out the best in himself, because I mean all of those triggers would be right there, both metaphorically and literally with his gun.
Yeah, I think the other thing that they're seeing is his kind of fatalistic view of all of this.
Mm.
I think it's the first time it's really hitting them that that six barrel might be for him, and that he's not really planning on getting out of this. Like, he's okay if this is the last thing he ever does. And I think that might be more of a betrayal to them, of like, you dragged us into something you don't expect to win.
Yeah.
That seemed to hit the party harder than just realizing that he wasn't as on top of it as they expected.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to see people you care about go through difficult things and to like be struggling so much. So I imagine it's a mix of this like betrayal, but also just like finding it hard to see Percy like hurting and falling apart in that way as people who care about him.
And he's committing wholeheartedly to it. That's the thing. I think that's the fatalism you're pointing to, is that he's in it like 120%. He's in this revenge vendetta that he has going on. And I don't know if the half elves are capable of that level of commitment yet in their lives. You know, like I think Scanlan understands that, and Grog understands that, because Grog commits to everything. It's like 100% in everything all the time, right? And I think Scanlan has enough life experience that he understands that this is trauma speaking right now with Percy. But I don't know if the half elves have enough of life experience to even recognize that yet.
I think it takes until they have to confront their own pasts for them to really understand where Percy was coming from in this instance. I think they are not quite ready for it yet.
Mm-hmm. How old is Grog?
I don't think we ever get a definitive age for him.
Mm-hmm.
Not one that I remember anyway.
Because I think
Yeah, I'm not sure.
27, I think I remember hearing that at some point.
Because the twins are 26, 27 during this campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Percy's younger. Pike is in her 40s or 50s. Scanlan is 69, because of course he is.
Yeah.
And Keyleth is also mid-20s, but I think she's just around Percy's age or a little bit older.
I didn't realize Pike was so old.
Well, she's a gnome.
Yeah,
right?
that makes sense, but I didn't realize that. Huh.
That's what I remember anyway. I could be wrong. I'm doing this off the top of my head.
I mean, I'm impressed. I mean, how would this story change too, do you think, if Pike was here for this?
I think it would change a lot. Like they were saying, like Pike knows more what to do with this. Like Pike is more attuned to the world of like gods and devils and things like that. I think Pike also is like this calming element that the party doesn't have. They feel more secure with her, but in also like her personality, she's really good at like diffusing situations and just being like, hey, and I think it would be fascinating to see a version of this where Pike was around. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not sure it would change anything with like Percy's motivations and vendetta, but I feel like the rest of the party would feel more in control and feel like more if they have a plan, and maybe if like Ashley rolled high enough on checks, she would be able to like help Percy understand like what's actually like going on, and more about everything going on sooner, and might be able to come up with a more concrete plan of action.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know if she'd actually know a whole lot more about what was going on, just because Orthax and Sarenrae are very different ends of the spectrum. But I agree, she very much has a tempering influence on the party, and that would be interesting to see. I think it would have played out in some very crucial ways in these conversations, in just getting everybody to chill and not have so much division within the party. I think plus she's really good at the compromise of these two kind of factions that they have.
Mm.
You know, they have kind of the half elves, and then they have, you know, the gnomes and Percy, and she's really good at finding the balance between these two kind of groups of people that are on slightly different footings on how they approach things. And I would love to see how it would play out with her here. Just because I don't think it would change much in terms of the information we have, but I think it would change a lot in how they respond to it.
I think that's the role that Keyleth's trying to play here. But she herself, I think, is too young and too traumatized to successfully play that role at this point in time.
Yeah, and Keyleth as a character is like very fixed on like the morality of what they're doing, whereas like Pike I feel like is better at that compromise. So I think Keyleth is I really appreciate it sometimes, her perspective of like, okay, like look at how many people we're hurting. Are we sure we want to do this? But that's not the outlook that helps in this particular situation.
Yeah, I think Keela's moral stance is too strong for her opinion to act as a compromise. Like, they have seen her very recently have very strong moral opinions about a lot of what they're doing. So they're always going to take it with that clouding what she's currently trying to say. And so I don't think there is any world in which she could have successfully acted as the compromise here.
Yeah. I also want to kind of shine a light on Scanlan in this episode because we see two extreme sides of him in this episode. Like we see because he's the adult in the first half in the conversation of trying to understand Percy's point of view while also trying to make sure that they achieve the goals that they're here to achieve. And then we just see his pissing, urinating side during the fight. And I think that just is another mask that we're seeing here, but it's a different kind of mask. But the group, I don't think necessarily realizes that yet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Scanlan's interesting in that he's taking this seriously, in that he's not gonna goof off the whole time, but he's not nearly as invested as anybody else is. He's here for his friend, he's here to do what they came to do, but he's not emotionally or morally invested in this in the way that anybody else in the party is. So he's got kind of a clearer head that he can bring to the picture, but he does it subtly, and that's how he always does these things. He is more of the subtle manipulator of party politics than the actual loud voice of a leader, which is always intriguing to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think the way that his like silliness and the way that he goofs off like goes to that advantage in a way, because the party doesn't see until like much later in the campaign just like how much depth he actually has as a person. Like he's like the silly guy, he's always making like sex jokes and all of these sorts of things, and but he's more than just that as well. And we like there are these glimpses of it that show it, but I don't think like the party fully clues in until much later.
And I think it just goes to show how much time can affect traumatic responses.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's obviously the oldest in the group, but he has a very similar backstory to the rest of the group. Like it's the D&D backstory. Like my parents died because of X, Y, and Z, and that forced me to go out into the world to be an adventurer, right? Like that's the whole D&D backstory that we often get. And, you know, that's the backstory of Vax and Vex. That's the backstory of Keela. That's the backstory of a lot of them in the group, Percy. And yet he has the distance of time to make him a little more detached from the emotional triggers that I think are getting to the half elves and Percy, obviously.
Yeah.
I think his personality also has a lot to do with it. He's, for better or for worse, bottles everything up, and tries to deflect so that the spotlight isn't on him, which I find highly amusing for someone who is so performance based. But he does it constantly.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't mention his own backstory for what, the first 70 episodes or something. Like it's,
Yeah.
he doesn't talk about it. He has no desire to be chasing down his own revenge or his own story. He doesn't want it to be mentioned. Um, and that's fascinating to me.
Mhm.
Yeah, it is. And I think a part of that is that like that timepiece it happened so long ago, but I think part of it too is just that like I mean that deflection and that's also a coping mechanism is
Absolutely.
ignoring how bad everything is and trying to make everything more light and funny and entertaining.
Absolutely. Well, on the topic of trauma, any personal experiences going to mind here?
Yeah, I think it says like what's just coming to me a lot is the different ways that like people process and experience trauma and even just like how much people process and experience trauma like within their own lives. It doesn't often vary from person, like it often varies from person to person, but it also varies for people in their own lives based on what the traumatic experience is and what the like what's going on in their life, like these sorts of things. I know there's definitely times where I've bottled things up that I should not have bottled up until they've exploded. I know there have been times when it's when like trauma has kind of like wrecked me right away immediately and kind of skewed the way that I like interact with the world. And so I've had like both of those experiences, and it's just interesting to see how how those differences can happen even within the same person. It's not just like, oh, this is the set coping mechanism this person has. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's different.
Yeah, I think I had a similar response in that I was, as we were going through this, thinking about, some of the events in my life that I have distance from that are now a whole lot easier to deal with, a whole lot easier to think about and talk about versus, last year, which was kind of hellish. And I don't want to touch on that because it's still like hugely emotional, but they're very similar events, just the space from them allows for a very different response and a very different view of them. And I think that what this episode was mostly seeing what that response looks like when there isn't any space. Um, and how important it is to take into account time when we're talking about how easy it is to deal with traumas and life events and how complicated that can be the closer you are to it.
Yeah, I'm actually writing a character right now that just massively experienced trauma, and her reactions are way overwrought. Like, it's funny, I had my first beta reader give me feedback, and they were kind of like laughing at how extreme her reactions are right now. And I'm like, that's kind of the point right now, because she literally just experienced the death of a close person to her. And of course, she's going to lash out at everyone around her, even though it doesn't necessarily make sense at the time. And it's interesting just kind of having to put yourself in those shoes, because I also actually think a lot about Caduceus and how he says that like people react to grief in so many different ways, and like how he's seen so many different forms of grief. Like I feel like Caduceus is almost like an evolved Percy sometimes. But yeah, I'm writing one of those characters right now, and I joke that her love language is stabbing. And so she's just reacting all over the place. And it's not necessarily pretty to watch, and it's not necessarily comfortable to watch, but she has to, for her character, she has to express that in kind of unhealthy ways at the moment. And I've definitely had times in my life like that I draw from in order to like make a character like that, to be like, yep, we're totally overreacting. And that's just kind of what we have to do right now in order to get past this thing in our life. And, you know, it's a matter of giving yourself grace for that overreaction. Like, Percy just needs a hug, honestly.
Yeah.
I just want to give Percy a hug and be like, it's okay.
Yeah.
If you need to be a smoke monster right now, okay, be a smoke monster. Tear out those tongues, baby. Okay. Well, what are we going to do about it?
I think from my end, it was take the opportunity to offer grace, you know, to yourself or to others. You know, there's a lot of responses to a lot of things, and you never know where somebody is coming from. It's probably not related to you. Most of the time, it's not related to you. So offer grace and understanding and kindness to people, just because people respond in weird ways, and you don't need to make them worse.
Yeah, like, let's go break some plates or something. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it's like, I mean, my whole work, I work at a youth shelter with youth who are at the worst parts of their life, basically. And so I think it's just, I don't know, it makes me think about the way that the youth respond to the trauma that they're dealing with, and the various numbers of ways that they're dealing with, and the crises that I'm helping with as a result. And I mean, I don't really know if there's anything I could do differently in that regard, but I think just like, just thinking again about all the different ways that trauma shows itself.
yeah, I'm sure you see the stuff every day.
Oh yeah. And like they're all young, like they're all the age ranges like 13 to 18, so they don't have that maturity yet. Although some of them respond to trauma by becoming like extra mature and put together, and those are the people who like bottle things up and all that. But yeah, like they're all so young and they're all dealing with such difficult life circumstances.
Yeah.
Like
So
that's
you're
why they're
dealing
there
with, like,
instead of in a more stable home. But
yeah, you're
yeah,
dealing with like Singborn era of Vex and Vax.
basically, yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. Well, anything else we want to cover before we start wrapping up?
I'm good.
I can't think of anything.
Do we feel complete?
Yep.
Sure.
Okay, well, this is powerful stuff that we're talking about. And audience, we definitely encourage you to share your own thoughts and feelings and insights and stories with us as well. We'd love to know how Critical Role episodes like these have impacted you in your own lives. Special thanks to Petall and Atlas today. It's been a pleasure.
It's been great to be here.
Always fun.
This is going to continue for next episode because it is also a Halloween episode for next episode, but there'll be different costumes next time, at least for us, not for the cast. But we'll be discussing Campaign 1, Episode 30, Part 2, and we'll be here as a trifecta again. I'm super excited for it, and as always, I'm looking for more co-hosts and guests, so if you're interested in coming on, sharing your perspectives, reach out to me. In the meantime, please comment, like, subscribe below, follow us on Tumblr at Sacred Reading CR for all the juicy updates. And until next time, may all beings be peaceful, may all beings be free, and be the cat of good you wish to see in the world. Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye.